always really exciting to hear you talk about the Supreme Court, and I wish I could talk about it like that, and I wish I could also understand everything in your Supreme Court review, but I'm working on it. I'll get there. So good evening to ACS board members and staff, and Dean Shapiro, Professor Kurzbaum, Mom and Dad. Thank you all for the opportunity to celebrate the promise of our Constitution and to receive all of this amazing love from so many people I admire so much. And simply for doing what I love doing. As we are all a product of our own experiences, I want to share a few that have shaped me. I suppose it all started in elementary school when we stopped eating grapes. My uncles who are here tonight worked with Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. And in the United Farm Workers movement, of course, my family participated in various grape boycotts. We were actually always boycotting something. But we were doing this in solidarity with the farm workers who were subjected to deadly pesticides and other unfair work conditions. So I brought my brand of activism to my third grade classroom, and I told my classmates how unfair it was that these farm workers were coming to work, getting sick, and weren't being taken care of like they should be. The boycotts caused the California table grape industry to change its practices, thus improving the conditions for the workers. And I learned at a young age about the power of social movement to create change. Then, in 2007, as a young lawyer, I found and reconnected with Robert, my high school boyfriend, who was in prison at the time. He had been convicted of a crime that I believe he did not commit. On weekends, I would visit Robert at Donovan in Otay, and I would learn about the facts of his case. I would learn about his experience being incarcerated. I would learn about his jury trial experience, what he understood, what he didn't understand, what he still didn't understand. And I also visited the public defender's office in San Francisco, who welcomed me with open arms and invited me to copy his file, which wasn't huge, but it was the trial file and all the evidence that was scarce, but that was there. So I copied it, I studied it. For years, I reviewed this case. I would talk to anyone who would listen to me, right, Jeff Chair? Okay? Mm-hmm. I would talk to anybody who was willing to listen, and I was always pondering, how could this happen to such a noble and good human being? He is such a gentle soul. You know, in school we learned that the Constitution applies to everyone, right? So I was so frustrated and discouraged by Robert's experience that I tried to find him help. But the reality was that he had already availed himself of the protection of our laws. He had a trial with representation, and he had an appeal. But in my eyes, he became the second victim in that case, when ultimately justice was denied to him. Well, this helped me realize that the law had been my friend, my protector, but that was not everybody's experience. I became a lawyer and found my passion in public interest law, and I was advocating for people who many times, through no fault of their own, are born into a world where they are less likely to experience forms of justice that are afforded to many of us and many others. This is why I love working at the Legal Aid Society of San Diego, where we work daily to afford people access to justice. Fun fact, so this award is named after Roberto Alvarez. This is not a very well-known name in San Diego, but he is a local San Diegan, and as a kid he contributed greatly to law and society and constitutional law. I recently met the son of Roberto Alvarez, and Roberto Jr. is a retired UCSD professor, having gone to Stanford for his PhD, and did not even know about his family's history. In this case, I took a photo with him that will be shown later in front of the mural depicting the 1931 Lemon Grove incident. It is an amazing mural by a local muralist named Mario Chacon. And his dad is also depicted in that mural as the 12-year-old lead plaintiff in the case. This was our country's first successful school desegregation case in our backyard. The year was 1930, when white families attempted to build a separate school for Mexican students. Well, the Mexican parents were not having this, and they did not want their kids in a substandard school. So they held barbecues and rummage sales, and basically were trying to raise money to pay the lawyer who was recommended to them by the local Mexican consulate downtown. But this lawyer named Fred New, he took the case pro bono. He filed a lawsuit against the Lemon Grove School Board, and they won. This case was 23 years before the landmark case that we know as Brown versus Board of Education. So I'd like us together to imagine a world where a small group of undocumented Mexican parents from Mexico, undocumented Mexican parents from Mexico, that they organize like this, okay? And that they use the law to protect their kids and ultimately improve the lives of their kids and themselves. I don't know if this guy, Roberto Jr., would have gone to Stanford and got a PhD, and also his son, another Roberto, or Luis Alvarez, is another professor at UCSD. So this family has had a very wonderful history in academia locally. So it's hard to imagine these circumstances occurring in the current climate that we find ourselves in, like Dean Shapiro has alluded to. But we also have to keep the promise of the Constitution alive. How do we do this? Well, I really think that it's important that we remember important things like civility, civic engagement, healthy debate, community, connectedness. Without these things, the Constitution is merely a piece of paper. I want to thank my family, my mentors, my colleagues, my yogis, for coming tonight to help me celebrate this special honor. I'm very grateful. Thank you.